All right, I am about to do a kata, and when we do katas here, we are learning through repetition and practice, and in this particular instance, we are learning test-driven development, and I'm going to be doing a bowling kata, so basically keeping track of and scoring a game of bowling. And most people, I think, know how bowling works, but it's got 10 frames, and each frame gives you up to 2 tries to get all the pins down. There's 10 pins, and if you get all the pins down on the first, then it's a strike, and it gives you 10 points plus whatever your next 2 rolls are. If you get all the pins down on your 2 tries, then it's a spare, and it adds 10 plus whatever your next roll is. So we're going to make something that can actually score out a game of bowling. So we're going to dive right in and describe our game. And I'm going to give myself a little subject. And that works just fine so far because of the basic setup I have. And I'm going to describe frames because a game should have some frames. And so the count of my frames should equal 10. And that fails because I don't have undefined method game of games. There we go. Now, there we go, undefined method frames. So my game doesn't know anything about frames. So we'll give it some frames. And now it can't pull count off of nil. So we're going to have to initialize it. So I'm going to basically try and create 10 frames, and that's going to fail because I don't know what frame is. So now I'm going to have to jump over and create a new file to be my spec for my frames. Find my spec helper. Create a new file for my frame class. And it still doesn't know what that is because I've got to go in my spec helper and require my frame class. And now we pass because it knows what a frame is. Awesome. So now going back here, we've got 10 frames. And now we're going to say my game has a whole bunch of rolls. So every time you roll the ball, we're going to call that a roll. So we're going to describe our rolls. And we're just going to set up a little context here when there are no rolls. We're going to expect that game dot rolls. Actually, did that wrong. We are going to we're not going to have rolls on our game. We're just going to be able to roll. That's right. So we are going to roll, and when we don't hit anything, when we just roll a 0, then then it should add the roll to the first frame. So we expect it to go into the first frame that we have there. So we expect game.frames.roles.count to equal 1. And that's going to fail because there's no roles on frames sub 0, our first frame. There we go. All right, there's no roles on a frame. So now we have to go over to our frame here. And here we're going to go subject frame, because we have to start building out our frame at this point. And we're going to describe roles and context. And there are no roles. And we expect frame.roles.count to equal 0. So that's straightforward enough. Let's go back over to our game real quick and let's pin that out so that while we're driving out this test, we can make sure that we're getting the right failures here. So there's undefined method roles for frames. So we're going to go ahead and give it some roles. And now it doesn't know how to count them, so we'll set them up. And it passed. Cool. So now, since that works, we can go over here to this test and test and see if this works. And we change the message now. So now our count is 0 instead of 1. So we still need to get a roll in there somehow. So let's go over to our game implementation. Oh, we didn't actually roll, so that's a problem. So let's try rolling. That'll give us a different message that fails. So we'll add on a method here. And get a little different message there. So we got 0 there. So let's just add in here. At frames, so 0. We're just gonna roll through to the frames and undefined method roll for frame. All right, so frames knows about roles, but doesn't know how to roll. So we will describe roll on a frame. And when a 0 is rolled, it adds the roll to the frame. Expect frame.roll 0 to change frame.rolls count by 1. So let's do that, but we don't have a roll method. So we'll make one of those. Got a method, so we wanted 1, we got 0, so we'll just go make that. And that passes. Very cool. Frames know how to roll balls. Now we'll come back over here and we'll check that, and that passes too. So now we're passing all over the place. So let's move on here. We want to describe our game to be a little bit smarter. This should pass, but just, actually we'll just skip right ahead. So when we roll 3 zeros, then it adds 2 rolls to the first and because a frame should only have 2 rolls. So we will say we want it 3 times, right? We'll roll 3 times, and we will expect that stuff. So our first frame to have 2 and our second frame to have 1. And that fails. We expected 2 and we got 3 in our first frame because we don't tell it to do any different there. So in our games here, we can basically say that.
Oh, the Apple TV.
Awesome.
Apple. I thought you were moving it up.
Let's go back here. All right, there we go, we're back. All right, cool. So what we'd like to do is actually only roll on a frame if it's open. So if frame sub 0 is open, then we'll go ahead and roll. Otherwise, we'll roll on the next frame. And that fails because we don't know how to ask if the frame is open. All right, so we're going to go ahead and hand that out and go back over here to frame. And we're going to describe open. When there are no rolls, we're going to expect the frame to be open. And open here. And we're just going to return true, which will pass that out. And when there is 1 roll, actually, that should be the same. That won't change the results. We'll say when there are 2 rolls. Then, lost my hand. Space there. I'm going to expect frame not to be open. That's going to fail. So now we'll say
Sorry, can we backtrack a little bit? Did you set this up as a new Rails app? Because it doesn't look like one.
This is not a Rails app.
Okay.
This is a Ruby file.
All right, you just made an empty folder and put a gem file in it? And made
I just made an empty folder and put, I actually used the Shuhari gem made by Jason, and it created a nice little folder with a lid and a spec and a guard file and a gem file and stuff like that.
Okay.
It's kind of small, but you can see his directory structure on the right side. Yeah, he's just basically just using Ruby and RSpec.
Okay.
All right. There we go. Now we're passing because I actually rolled. Cool. All right. So now we should be able to come back to our game and check this, and it passes too. Awesome. So now we can check here that we actually want to do something very similar. And when we roll 5 zeros, it adds 2 rolls to the first 2 frames, and 1 to the 3rd. And just copy that. Change that to 5. Change that to 2. All right, checking all that. And that fails because I've got this logic here that's not very smart so far, so we'll just make it pass first. And now we're passing, so now we can do a little bit of refactoring here, where it would help if we knew what frame we were on. So we're going to set our index during initialize to 0, and add on a little index, and let's create a few more methods down here. Current frame should be frames, so 0 so index, and let's give us a way to advance. There, adding all that shouldn't have changed anything. All right, cool. So now we can say if current frame dot open, then current frame dot roll ends, and otherwise we'll advance our frame and roll ends. And that should pass. All right, that's a lot nicer. And over here, everything's still passing. And what we can do now is say, at some point, we are going to roll enough things that when you're in the 10th frame, there's some special stuff that happens. So if you roll a spare in the 10th frame, then you get an extra ball to get your bonus on your spare. And so we want to make sure that when we roll actually, we don't need that for, are we doing game? Yeah, we're still in game right now. So when we're in roll here, then yes. So when we roll, so when we roll a game of all 5s, so that would be before we're going to do 21 times, we're going to do game dot roll 5, and it adds 2 rolls to the first 9 frames and 3 rolls to the last. All right, so now we can, I'm just going to check game dot frames. 9 rolls not count to equal 2. Actually, that's 8. And 9 should equal 3. And that's going to fail because it actually tried to advance into an 11th frame. It got nil. And so we need to make open smarter so that open understands about that. So what we're going to do now is end that again. And we're going to go back into our frame. And we're going to do a similar context here. So context, when it is the last frame, when 3 5s are rolled, when it's the last frame, when 2 5s are rolled. That, and we are going to expect it to be open, because it should allow another roll here. So that's going to fail, and it got true, but well, we wanted it true, but we got false. So the problem is we don't have any way for a frame to know if it's the last frame. So open needs to be a little bit smarter. So we're going to change the definition of open here a little bit. And we're going to say that open takes a parameter here, last true. We're going to default to false. And we're still failing here, and we're going to say that frame dot open with last true, we want that to be true. So if it's the last frame under these circumstances, it should be true. And just because we told it it's the last frame doesn't mean we can do anything with it. So what we're going to do here is if unless we're in the last frame, and if we are in the last frame, and I realize at this point I skipped a huge step here, so we're going to still make this work. So we're going to return true if spare. Otherwise, we're going to return false.
You know you return when you're in the list.
I do. That would be why I got the other thing. All right, now we're all messing here. All right, and we're going to actually, since I already messed up and jumped too far, and I'm almost out of time, we're going to stop. And I did not get even as far as I was hoping I would get, so I had a feeling that would happen once I actually got up to doing it live. So I'm just going to stop with my 1 minute prematurely and have time for questions.
Wait, there's 5 minutes.
I know, so there's 5 minutes of questions, but I'm giving 6 minutes for questions. So,
Okay.
because I'm not going to add much more of value in the next minute. So any questions about, other than why doesn't it actually score anything? Yes.
So I kind of missed the whole setup part of this app. You said use the Shohari gem.
Yes. So I was doing a Kata, which is practicing test-driven development, and you don't have to use the Shohari gem. It just happens to be an easy way to get started if you want to practice using katas. All you actually need is a Ruby file and the RSpec gem installed if you want to use RSpec. And you can do it all in one file if you want. I happen to like a little bit of structure to it, and the Shohari gem gives you some structure. So basically, Shohari works a lot like Rails in that you can say Shohari new, and then you give it a name. In this case, I gave it the name game, and it gave me a nice little project to work in with a game.rb and a gamespec.rb, and then I can just build up from there. It also has some nice features as well, where you can say, after you're done practicing, you want to reset to the beginning, you can say Shohari empty, and it'll just flush out everything you've done and make you do it all over again. And you can keep doing that. And I am sure at this point, having done this in front of everyone, that no matter how many times I practiced, I definitely would not have gotten through this whole thing. So I was too ambitious pulling this one off. I was hoping to at least get through defining tracking the rolls properly so that the frames would get filled up, but I didn't get that far. And then the next step would be to actually make sure that we can score what's in those frames. Yeah.
I was confused right at the beginning when I saw that line that says 10.times.each.map.
Yeah.
And I was thinking,
Oh yeah.
you actually don't need the each.
Yes, you do.
You do?
10 dot times will give you, will let you iterate over, we'll do something 10 times. However, 10 dot times takes a block of something to do 10 times.
But if you don't pass it a block, you get an enumerator, which is exactly what you.
Yeah, I just tried it, and it 10.times.map does the same thing as
Did it?
10.times.each.map.
Yeah.
I thought I had tried it once and it didn't do what I wanted it to do, but maybe it does.
Yeah, it's good.
I probably did something slightly different. So, yes, that'll.
And is that the same as using a range? I was going to ask a
But-
question about that too. Just 1.10.
Pretty much.
Okay.
It's similar,
It's 0 to 9, yeah.
Oh, 0.9, you're right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
nice one.
I know that something I was doing didn't give me an enumerator and I had to force it with each. You can always get an enumerator by saying each. So it doesn't hurt to slap an each on there because it'll force whatever you have into an enumerator.
Yeah, if you just type 10.times in IRB
Yeah.
and look at what's returned,
It's
you'll
an
see that it's an
enumerator.
enumerator.
Okay.
I was pretty surprised at your leap to make the index variable. I thought that was kind of a big leap because what
It was
you-
just a refactoring.
Well, no, I thought you were doing it to make a test pass. The test.
No, I made my test pass and then I refactored.
Oh, that's right. It was a refactor.
It was
Oh,
a
yeah.
complete refactoring.
So-
I didn't change any functionality.
Okay. It seems. Well, you added a new thing called index.
Well,
So
I
that's
added a
new-
reader. I could have made that private,
Yeah.
but I was too lazy to make a private reader.
You could have grabbed the current frame just from the data you had already.
Yeah, you could do dot finds. That's what I was.
How would I know?
It's supposed to open the frame.
Yeah. I guess at that time, open didn't take any arguments, so just do current frame dot finds, and then ampersand open question mark, or yeah, frames dot find. It just seems whenever you add new state, it seems like a big risk because you have to worry about initializing and keeping it up to date, and might make it hard to make future features like undo.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could just have done a next frame that could figure it out. And so if the current frame is not open, then do it on the next frame. But doing it this way was nice because I could just advance it and then do the same